Hey everyone, this is Tony Holbein. You are listening to The Revenue Formula with Mikkel and Tony. In today's episode, we talk about the recent developments in AI, what we really know about it, and why everyone should just calm a bit down.
Before we jump into the show, today's episode is brought to you by Everstage, the top-rated sales commissions platform on G2, Gartner Peer Insights, and Trustradius, with more than 2,000 reviews from customers like Diligent, Wiley, Trimble, and more. Visit everstage.com and mention Revenue Formula to unlock a personalized sales compensation strategy session with one of Everstage's RevOps experts. And now, enjoy the show.
So last night, it was Superbowl. I mean, I guess most Europeans. No. And I guess most Europeans, you're like, oh, that was yesterday? Oh, cool. Didn't know. It's like, I didn't know it was in February, but that was yesterday. And one of the companies that spent some money on the infamous ads there, which by the way cost around $8 million US, depending on how you place them, was OpenAI. They placed an ad there. And you would assume that they created with AI, right? You would assume. Did they?
Of course they didn't.
Of course they didn't. They used it for prototyping, but they were like, this very important stuff of actually getting that $8 million ad to succeed, we'll leave that with the dependable
What was the
humans.
ad about? I didn't see it.
No, I just watched it actually before we started recording. So the ad is 60 seconds, and it's basically 45 seconds of weirdly animated things showing human invention, which is also hilarious, by the way, showing human inventions like the light bulb, the airplane, finding out the discovery of the DNA, getting a man on moon, all that stuff, like the classic stuff.
Inventing beer.
And the post. And then all of a sudden it's like, turns into summarize this for me and blah, 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 that for me. And then ChatGPT, right? I was just like...
It's so funny, right? Because the invention of the light bulb, the invention of fire, the invention of electricity, the internet, DNA, and then summarize this email for me. It's like, oh, wow. Yeah, no, you deserve to be in that chain. 100%. Yeah.
I think they're playing with the things that have made an impact on our life. And could you imagine not having AI?
Could you imagine still needing to read actual emails instead of the just summarize the shit for me button?
Or actually hiring SDRs to make calls versus just having an AI SDR? Honestly,
terrible.
Terrible. Jesus.
I mean, it's right up there with imagining not having the internet or not having
Oh man. Oh, so much is happening. You also kind of called it and said, you know what? I have an intro today. I've done my homework. And is it about kids today or no?
So, I mean, I think this was the perfect intro, actually. Maybe we can save this for the next episode.
You know what?
It was just a mini story I wanted to say. But you know what? This is why you need to hit the subscribe button. If you really want to hear the story, you need to listen to it next time. Sorry.
I was just going to say, it's like those good old shows that really understands how to hook people.
Yeah.
So it's like, cliffhanger. Dang it! Now I need the next one.
And I think we talked to enough people to know that actually they shut off after the first 5 minutes. Once the intro is over, it's like, okay, I don't do AMAE whatever. I don't care.
So thanks for listening. It's been a pleasure. Talk to you next time.
Bye.
No, so the energy is kind of returning, I can tell. One of the things we wanted to talk a bit about today is SaaS. Is dead or is it? Obviously, a lot of things is happening in the AI space. It's moving incredibly fast. And one of the things you wrote about the other day was, funny enough, OpenAI presenting in Japan. What was it they were presenting there?
So I think they were actually presenting to a business crowd. I think they were trying to sell OpenAI Enterprise. And I think for many people, it's really hard to imagine, well, what can you do with this thing, right? Besides yes, summarizing an email and telling me what, I should be doing in my travel destination and stuff. And what they did there, and I think it's either internal tooling of OpenAI or it's really just some developers whipped this up over the weekend. They basically did a demo of, I think precisely an inbound SDR workflow. So someone fills in a form, then something gets researched and qualified, then there's an outreach email going out, and so forth, right? Yeah. And I think what was stunning there, well, the purpose was, hey, listen, this is what you can do with AI. Kind of, this is just one idea, and there are hundreds of others. But what I felt was stunning there was like, oh geez, man, this, this used to be, someone building a slide deck for 2 weeks, trying to, stitch a demo together, or maybe a Figma in more recent years. And now this looked like legit software. This looked like, this was not kind of a mock-up. This was the real thing. And that they could just pull this off for like an event like this, pretty stunning.
Yeah, no, definitely. I think it's also just hilarious because it also made me reflect on one other thing, which is this whole people talking about GPT wrappers, that's not going to last, it's not going to work out. Do we want to maybe just, because this is a GPT wrapper, by the way, it is a packaging of ChatGPT into something else. Do we just want to, because I said it like before we even recorded, like, what is a GPT wrapper even? Let's maybe just reposition that a little bit.
Yeah, so what is a wrapper? Basically, it's the idea of a very thin and insinuating with it also very low value interface on top of the actual value, which is the AI and the model and so forth, right? And in the early days, someone like Copy AI was, considered the GPT wrapper with just a very simple interface and then doing tons of AI calls in the back to, to do the work that they need to do, right?
Yeah.
And I want to say, this is now 2 or 3 weeks old of time of recording. There was a wave of people basically saying, all of those wrappers are dead. I forgot why that was, actually. I already forgot the context, honestly. I think it was OpenAI came out with scheduled, so a task.
Oh, the task.
Stuff,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
I mean, literally, this feels like a Trumpian
operator.
news cycle.
And
right?
operator
like,
as well.
This is only 2 weeks ago. And then this operator thing on top, right? And basically everyone was like, oh no, this is, now forget all the interface stuff you built. You can trash it now.
Yeah.
Then, later that week, the DeepSeek stuff came out. And people were like, oh, wait a minute. Wait. I think those API calls, they're going to get a lot cheaper. So I think the actual value is in the thin wrapping that we used to poop on just yesterday. So let's just change course. Let's just go 180 in the other direction. And I think around this time, I think a little bit previous to that, Satya Nadella from Microsoft basically had an interview and he was talking about, hey, agents and agentic workflow is going to replace lots of the application stuff. And there was a whole maelstrom around. I mean, we did a show with Jonathan Moss on, AI is eating software, et cetera, right? So I think lots of, killing, dead, eating, stuff out there. Yeah. And I think this is what we wanted to talk about today, to clean this up a little bit, right? Yeah. Because there's a lot of hysteria, there's a lot of hype, and I think some of the hype is justified, but then there's also a lot of hysteria around this. Yeah. You and I sometimes stoking that hysteria.
Yeah, just gonna say,
not on purpose. No. But I think because we are hysteric ourselves.
Yeah,
right? We're just a reflection of what's going on here. But we just wanted to take a step back and be like, hey, what is it we actually know about this whole thing? What is it we don't know, and what should we take away from it?
Yeah. I think it's also kind of our obligation, right? You don't definitely want to be in our hysteria when we're not recording. It's just too crazy for everyone to even publish, to be honest, right? But I think it's fair to say things are moving incredibly fast, right? Things are moving incredibly fast. And I think also one of the telltale signs of how crazy things are getting is when you search for things on YouTube and you get a random YouTuber pro dude who is like an affiliate person, and it feels like everyone is pushing the same N8N workflow automation type things that you can build, pay me X $1,000 for a course. Or I think there's actually a lot of fraud as well happening in this whole kind of bubble. Yeah. And I think it's just time for us to say, calm down. Let's calm down, take a step back, and just assess what are the things we actually know to be true right now. Yeah. Because things are moving incredibly fast. And one of the things you and I just very quickly arrived at is like, are there really new problems out there to be solved? Are there truly that many new problems to be solved, right? And it's almost like I was thinking about how many companies actually die when new technology like this happen. And usually it's like one or two big ones you're going to remember. Right now we've discussed Check, so the online tutoring company that's publicly traded.
That no one knows, by the way.
That no one knows, but they were like $1 billion company. Now they're, actually they were maybe 50 billion or something. Now they're just 1 billion, too bad.
$1 billion company.
Too bad.
Right there.
Yeah, but maybe it's going to end up being zero. And it's like, so last time this stuff happened with smartphones, it was Nokia. They still kind of exist. I think they were even acquired by Microsoft.
Before that was Kodak and kind of, there's always those stories, right?
There's always those stories, but So is it like an entire sector? Does that ever die? And I'm just not so sure, because those problems, they've by and large already been solved, right?
So I think, when we were kind of chit-chatting about this previously, I think you had a good example there with the horse carriage to the car to the electric car. It's the problem was always the same.
Yeah.
Like, get me from A to B without me needing to move my legs. Like, please do that, right? And when we had the horses in the horse carriage, car, carriage, it's the same. By the way, it comes from one another. You were sitting there and going from A to B. Now you're in the car, you need to do the steering yourself. And, soon there's maybe, steering not. And the EV part is really convenient. But ultimately, the problem stayed the same. The solution evolved a little bit, but the solution still at its core was getting you from A to B, right? and really, so frankly, as humans, you kind of care little about how this is sometimes being solved. If we had an awesome solution with a horse in front, would you care? If
it's faster than your car,
to work, exactly. Yes. If that was still to work and kind of would be better and cheaper and so forth, then you would still do that, right? Yeah. But and then I think the same thing, when we take a step from all the LinkedIn and Twitter and YouTube stuff that's coming at us, is like, what problems, what new problems do we have? And the answer is very, very few new problems. Very few new problems. So really it's about like maybe improving some solutions, like in a new way with AI. But is that solution going to be fundamentally different in all cases? And I think the answer is, I don't know, probably no. No. Does everything now need to be a chat interface? Am I going to prompt my way through, I don't know, setting up a Marketo workflow? Like, I'm not sure. I'm not sure that this is the most efficient way to do some of these things, right? And I think it's really healthy for everyone to just like take a step back and realize what really has changed, and most importantly, what hasn't changed. And what you will find is that 99% of things probably haven't actually changed.
Yeah. I think it's also like with the example of the car, right? How often do you think people go out and they just pop the hood and look at the engine and go like, oh my God, I totally made the right decision getting a car because it has this engine that looks exact. It's like, you don't buy it because of the technology. I'm sorry. You buy it because of you buy it maybe because of how the engine is performing, by the way, like the mileage and blah, 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 blah. But you don't care that it's an electric or a petrol or a million other things, unless you have like preference for environmental friendly stuff, etc. So it's just to say the solutions are there. And I think the point also to be made here is like, we already have a CRM, right? We have a CRM. It's implemented. It's working. You can hate it for all its flaws and imperfections, but is an AI solution really going to come in and replace that? I'm not so sure. I think on the flip side, there might be some problems that we've lived with that could potentially get solved a little bit better now, or could actually get solved. And I think specifically stuff like the repetitive task and the manual task, there will be some that will get replaced. I think we've seen the company called Harvey AI that does legal research. Super helpful. You will still need a human in there, but super helpful. It's probably replacing quite a few people in doing the research. The question is, were there people doing that amount of research before? Question mark. Right.
Yeah, they were.
I
think this is one of those examples. It's like, this makes total sense.
Yeah,
actually makes total sense.
Yeah, they lost it. But and I think that there are going to be some of those. Let's be fair. We know there will be some of those tasks out there. I think that's why you're also seeing a race to try and replace SDRs, because it's fairly standardized work, to be honest. And for whatever reason, they've just not been able to nail it yet. Probably in a couple of years, we'll sit on this show and talk about, hey, which one is actually performing best? Is this one or that one? Because all of them work. But, so I think let's just conclude. There are only so many problems out there. There are only so many opportunities. Calm down. Calm down. Right?
I think the next thing that's kind of starting to happen is people don't really care about that AI is part of your product. And I think we can debate whether or not this is from a, hey, I just need my problem solved, I don't care how it's being solved perspective, or if it comes from just the expectation that AI is everywhere. Like,
Yeah.
is it
Yeah,
a hygiene thing, or is it just really
It's
a
like,
non-caring
you don't have
thing?
it? Yeah.
But some research now suggests that there's no difference between the AI label being on your product versus it being there from the perception of the buyer, right?
Yeah.
So very, very interesting. Also, new fact that we're starting to know and see that doesn't potentially play a role. So kind of also around this, maybe calm down.
Yeah. I think it's also it almost makes me think about David Ogilvy. So when he would do an ad for a airline company, he
No
would
one
basically
knows who that person is, by the way.
David Ogilvy?
Yeah.
Haven't they watched Mad Men?
Okay.
No?
Yeah. They have.
Okay,
probably,
so if
and
you
they
don't
think
know,
it's
if you don't
Don
know,
Draper.
let's Don Draper. Yeah, if you don't know David Ogilvy, it's Don Draper from Mad Men. This ad guru. He's written tons of amazing books. Go check them out. They're old, but they still work. One of the things he would do, he specifically did with an account. It was an airline. He went out there and got a walkthrough of, well, how does this thing actually? How does it work? How does the airplane work? What are some of the features of this airplane? And they walked him through things like, oh, it has a seatbelt, convenient. It has these insane filters on the air that basically removes any kind of bacteria, viruses, like insane. So all those features, he could go and say, well, it's fair to say it's a very safe airplane because we have this filter, we have a seatbelt, we have a few other pieces, right? He's not really talking heavily about the technology in those pieces. And an airplane is, at that point in time, it was actually a big achievement to fly that many people from A to B, right? And it is a very complicated solution, quite frankly. And I think it just goes to show AI is obviously part of deriving an outcome, but what people care about is, can do the work I want it to do and give me the outcome I need, right?
Yeah.
So that's why the label, people, I don't think to that degree care about it. And it doesn't matter whether it's because they just assume it's there or not, don't care. They care about their problem.
I think it's a little bit like, for the people that are old enough in the late 90s, early 20s with Intel inside, probably in the early, probably in the
true
2000s, right? And basically the reason why everyone was up in arms with like Intel and, their stock roared because of it was they managed to be a boring technology provider that consumers suddenly cared about. Oh, is the Intel inside? Because otherwise I think I can't,
Yeah.
And I think what's happening now with AI is kind of the reverse, actually, which we usually see. That's the usual trend, right? You have a new technological breakthrough. Everyone is like, oh, wow, this is absolutely great. You see a couple of companies rushing to become the shovels and pickaxe suppliers for organizations to use technology.
Yeah.
And, now we have OpenAI, we have Anthropic, we have, Mistral, maybe, I don't know, Legit. And then, we have, Facebook, we have DeepSeek. We have a couple of other folks that are kind of doing that stuff. And I think this is the other piece. What's going to come out of this is like, number one, it's being commoditized. So what does commoditized actually mean? Kind of, I think it's a fancy word for it's going to get cheaper, friends, right?
Yeah.
So it's really about now a race to the bottom. People don't care which, model specifically, but all those models kind of the same. And I think we're starting to lose overview of like 03, 01, 031 mini and 01 mini is beating 03. And it's like, you have no clue anymore. So kind of that stuff is just like, okay, now this has entered white noise space. You are starting to be like, oh wait, DeepSeek is better than OpenAI, but DeepSeek at 5 million, OpenAI is like hundreds of billions or whatever. Like, how does, all of your ways of trying to make sense of this stuff from a non-technical perspective, they're getting diluted and washed away. So what's going to happen very soon is like, people are like, I don't care. Is it a model? Does it do the task? Yeah, okay, cool, let's buy that. And I think what it's most, comparable here is, think about all the cloud providers. It started with Amazon Web Services, right? And no one even knows that word anymore. It's all AWS by now. Then Microsoft was, dang, we missed the train on that. Let's jump on this with Azure. Google did the same thing. And now at the end of the day, it's now AWS, GCP, and Azure, and that's it. And everything that, a commercial person really knows about and thinks about is like, is it one of those three? Because all the other stuff, I don't know, right?
Yeah.
And the same thing is happening with those models right now. And it's going to be all about the same thing with AWS and Azure and GCP. It's like, is it cheaper? Is it faster? And then let's move on, right?
Yeah.
And I think that's That's frankly where this stuff belongs.
Yeah.
I think from a very arrogant, commercial perspective, this stuff belongs in the background. Push it and shove it there. And I think OpenAI will take a hit. Number one, or OpenAI will okay, you know what? All this modeling stuff is kind of commoditized. We now need to jump way more to the application layer, which is kind of almost another thing we could be discussing here.
Yeah.
But, takeaway, AI costs are going to go down, 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 down.
And I just want to double back to say I'm so thankful that we have a European solution and that they chose to call it Le Chat. Because I could not have lived with this being a German invention and then it would have been called Das Chat. And it's just it's not going to work. It's not going to work. No, but I think you're right. So this thing will get commoditized. It will get cheaper. And I think what you will see is there's going to be some companies who are smart, who know that something right now is very costly to do with AI, but they also know that the cost is going to go down.
Yeah.
So there is an opportunity there. If you can find it, write me. Maybe I want to go build something there. The other thing, just to keep us moving along here, my friend, is I saw, and this is by now, probably 2 years ago, David Sachs on stage with Jason Lemkin at SaaSer, I think in London. They were talking about AI from obviously a VC perspective. David Sachs is a VC. Do you know what fund is it he's running?
I forgot, but also he's not cool anymore, at least.
No, exactly. We'll cut it out just so, I'll AI edit it to give the answer so we sound smart. But they were basically talking about AI, and David Sachs made an interesting point, which was hey, for now, there's no more SaaS really to be built, but what AI is doing is it is expanding the pool of opportunity, meaning there's more investment opportunities happening, right? And specifically also what we've seen to that end is that the market is expanding all of a sudden. There is AI budget out there, and there has been for quite some time. People explicitly want to experiment with this technology and see whether they can reduce their cost base, improve efficiency, grow revenue, or improve customer retention, employee happiness, or a million other things, right? So there's a lot of experimentation happening out there and also a lot of learning. And an interesting, I think, result of that as well is some companies are trying to build their own solution versus buy as well. So we're in this kind of weird scenario. And I think what is super interesting right now is a lot of companies, they're going to be able to grow fast, sell their AI technology into a lot of companies. But I just wonder what's going to happen in a couple of years when the companies are, okay, let's actually now go and evaluate all this AI budget and AI spend and AI tooling. Is it actually working for us? Mm-hmm. I think that is going to be a very interesting point in time. That's eventually going to come. Eventually it's going to happen.
Let me unpack kind of those two things you mentioned. One is around the AI opportunity from an investor perspective, but from a market perspective. Then the other one is almost kind of connected to that, kind of the budget around this, right?
Yeah.
I think on the AI opportunity side, I think a lot of people's imagination has been, triggered. I don't know yet if it really has led to, people being let go, by the way. I still haven't really seen
check. But
but I haven't seen at least anything that would justify some of the spending. Let's just be really honest about that. Haven't seen this. And kind of our echo chamber is very much around the AI SDR and stuff, and that doesn't work. So, but there might be other things where it does work out, but I haven't really seen companies scale down. And the Klarna guys kind of keep talking about this, but I would tread carefully. Tread carefully. I think there's also just hey guys, we're kind of going IPO in 6 to 9 months. So, let's add my profile and kind of, So I kind of would be careful about this, right? And then on the budgeting side, I think this is actually way more interesting because while a lot of people's imagination has been triggered and oh, wow, we could kind of save so much cost, and we all believe that that's probably true, at some point probably in a year, maybe this year, maybe later this year, probably, the CFOs will come back and be like, guys, we just, we keep running the numbers. It keeps not going in the right direction. I don't think this is working out here, right? Someone will come and call BS and add a reality check to this thing. And what's then, the big question then is going to be well, will that lead to all of the experimental budget that's been assigned to AI to be cut back? And it's yes, it will. 1,000% it will, right? Unless you really have solved a problem that led to, people being let go. Yeah. It's very hard to imagine where this reality check isn't going to come anytime soon.
This is like the gym membership you keep clinging to, thinking you will definitely use
Tomorrow.
it. You will. Tomorrow is the day. Tomorrow.
Yeah.
It's like no. I think the last piece, which by the way probably also is a bit common. I think in a time like this, I think there is also this fallacy of, hey, won't ChatGPT just build that? Like, won't we just, or could we just not build it ourselves? By the way, will also be honestly a thing on people's mind. And I think let's not underestimate how difficult it can be to build and get, let's just say, an AI SDR to work, since they had that example, right? Right now, it's when I saw it, I was like, okay, so it does something on email, back and forth with the prospect on scheduling a meeting. Have you heard of Calendly and like the confirmation pages? So, I obviously don't know all the details here, but I think it's just suffice to say things are a bit more complicated on the surface once you want to build a new piece for a user. And honestly, isn't there so much opportunity left in the current interface and solution they've built? I still just want to see at some point them disrupting the search space like completely. There's so much opportunity there to have ads. And I think I heard from Google's earnings call, they're like, yeah, with the experimentation they're doing with AI, it's actually better for their ads and also better for the users at the same time. So they're like trying to rush to roll this out now, right? So I think there might be something happening there. And it made me think of, was it Steve Jobs who said to it's Aaron Levy who founded Dropbox, like, we're going to steal your feature. And they kind of did. But you know what? Dropbox is also doing okay right now. They're still an established business. I don't know, like, I'm assuming so at least, right? So I think I would just calm a bit down with the fear of ChatGPT and coming in and stealing Salesforce's CRM. Like I'm not sure this is like the natural next step for them.
So I think though this is in the realm of what we don't know yet, right? And I've been thinking about this a lot. Obviously, kind of also building the company here that we're building. What is an OpenAI's path next?
Yeah.
Right. And we've already seen them. I think wiping out is a strong word, but challenge some of the investments that were made in the last 2 or 3 years, where someone was creating an AI wrapper and helping on the workflow level, right?
Yeah.
And because it's fairly, the wrapping is fairly thin, basically, it doesn't take that long for OpenAI to go there and kind of replace that thin layer of workflow that's been put on top. And therefore then challenging that company, that investment, that use case that was kind of built around, right? It's not cool, I can tell you that. I don't think it's a cool situation for any startup to be in to try and compete against an OpenAI. They're like insanely funded. They're still, yes, they're 7 or 8 or 9 years old now, but really they're 2 years old. Like that's how you need to think about them, right? And it's not like it's an old dusty incumbent you're going up against. No, it's like this is you just don't want to do that. That's what I think. You just don't want to do that. And if you're and by the way, your investors also don't want to do that. So if you're in the path of them, that's kind of shitty. So really trying to figure out where they're gonna go next, or is super valuable and interesting, but we just won't know, right?
Yeah.
If there's any prediction I have is, if it's true that models are getting further and further commoditized, then for them to maintain their $150 billion valuation, they kind of need to then add another trick to the show, because otherwise it's not going to work out. And that might be the application layer. So kind of how far they're going to go into this, I don't know, but certainly something to be mindful of. I think if there's another thing that I'm kind of thinking about a lot, what is frankly unknown, is like, how far will this AI thing actually go? Yeah. Right? We're starting to now live it for 2 or 3 years. We're, for business purpose, for human purposes, I think it's already like extremely intelligent. It's a little bit unclear to me what artificial general intelligence actually means and how this is going to be useful and how it's going to be different. And are they going to become the Terminator and the Skynet that we all think? Or is it just going to be a really cool tool in the end, right? So again, when people came out with a train, like the actual train on rails 150 years or something ago, they were thinking their limbs are going to fall off if they go faster than 20 kilometers an hour, right? It didn't happen. So it's like there's a little bit of this in me where I'm like, it might still go further. Maybe we're actually reaching a ceiling already now. But even if it does go further, what does that then actually mean? Is everything going to automatically integrate? Is everything going to be done by just an AI clicking button? I don't know. But there's starting to be a healthy skepticism of like, is it really going to get so much different? Have we kind of reached the understanding what this thing is? And now it's all about incremental performance improvements and incremental cost, reductions, right?
Yeah.
And then I think the last one we've touched on already is like, well, these experimental software AI budgets, how long are they going to last?
Yeah.
Right. And I've now heard it from very kind of interesting source. Basically 11x net retention rate in some month is 60%. So and what does that mean? It basically means, and maybe we edit this out and say AI SDR retention is 60%, in a couple of months. So what does that mean? It means that a lot of those experimental budgets are starting to pull back. People are starting to get to the point, hey, this actually doesn't work for us. So we actually need to cut this thing again, and then it's unclear. Does the CFO feel like, oh, let's roll the dice again on something else? Or is it like, oh, no, actually kind of this hype, let's just dial it back a little bit?
Yeah. No, I agree. And I think it's also probably everyone is seizing the opportunity right now of building AI, to be frank, because it matters for the VC landscape. If they want to raise another round, it matters for your ability to sell, to tap into those budgets. But I think where the struggle is real is on finding experiments that actually work, right? And it must also be difficult to be on the recipient end and saying, hey, I'm going to give you some budget. You go figure out some AI stuff that's going to help us. It's like, well, okay, that's I think it's going to be very interesting to see once those conclusions on the extended proof of concepts start coming in. What does that actually look like for businesses? Are they going to be still so bullish on rebuilding everything with AI and slashing half their workforce because now AI is going to do it? Let's see. At least. It's unclear how that's going to play out. But I think this was just important to get out there for everyone in the market. Just calm a little bit down. Cool your jets. Look at this through reason and logic of what's happening. Yes, it's going super fast, but try and look at what's happening and determine the best path forward for your function, for your teams, for your business, and don't panic over this stuff. It's actually an amazing time we're living through right now. These major transformations only happen ever so often.
So, I'm interested in US politics, but we never talk about this on the show for obvious reasons because that's not what we talk about. But there is a little bit of a thing right now in the US politics that kind of is about like, don't listen to what they say, kind of listen to what they do, right? Yeah. Because there's a lot of like stuff being thrown up and things are being changed and so forth, and everyone is like in shock. And I think the same is kind of true for this whole AI thing. Kind of instead of listening to all the LinkedIn influencers and the YouTube stars and what's happening on X and Twitter, like start looking at what is actually happening in those organizations, right? And what is happening in the SMBs of today. What is happening in the majority of business? What is happening in the majority of the large corporates? Sure, they have some arms that kind of do some interesting stuff, but 99% of their business is completely unaffected by this stuff. Right? So look at a little bit what really is going on instead of the hype. And I think that will give everyone a little bit of a balanced feeling. Does that change that, Mikkel and I don't know, maybe you speak for yourself, are extremely bullish on AI and thinking that it will have a pretty strong impact? No, it doesn't. But it also means, hype is hype and hysteria is hysteria. And we just sometimes need to kind of figure out how those two things play together. And I think for right now, keep an eye out on AI and how it's developing, but also don't play into the hysteria. No. Keep calm and chill the fuck out.
That's it. I also just I owe you an apology, Tony, because I kind of stole the intro from you. You're like, I have it today, and then I just swooped right in and stole it. So I just want to preempt and say apology. And also I want to say to you, the dear listener, if you made it this far, it means you actually listened to the chunky middle, not just the intro and outro bit. Really appreciate it. Do hit subscribe, like, follow if you haven't already, or drop a review. It helps us grow this show. Tony, thanks so much.
Thanks, Mikkel. Thanks, everyone, for listening. Have a good one. Bye-bye. Bye.